Hey Houston, as we step into the 2024 hurricane season and continue having these once in a lifetime, except that they're actually reoccurring natural disaster events, one of which we are living through right now, I thought it would be an excellent time to do a video on the weather here in the Houston suburbs, because going nearly a week without power in the heat and humidity is pretty miserable. So just this last Thursday in Cypress, there was a severe thunderstorm in the forecast, but severe thunderstorms are not out of the ordinary here. I'd say at least one area of Houston gets some sort of thunderstorm every 10 days or so. Last Thursday evening, I was FaceTiming my mom and getting my two youngest kids ready for bed when I kept getting notifications and my phone kept beeping. I wasn't really reading them because I thought it was just the regular thunderstorm notifications, but then I got a couple of text messages saying that there is a tornado in Bridgeland. Then I looked at the notifications and realized it was a tornado warning for the area and to take shelter. So we took the three kids and our two dogs to the bathroom in the middle of the house, since that's the only place in my house that doesn't really have windows or stairs. And not even 30 seconds after being in there, the lights went out, our cell phone service stopped working, and it really sounded like a freight train was outside. We could hear all the wind and hail pounding the roof and windows. I think the worst part in this moment was losing all cell phone signal, because I had no idea if there was actually a tornado or how long we should stay in the shelter. Since I still had no power or cell phone service, about 15 minutes after it stopped raining, my oldest son and I took a walk to go figure out what the heck had just happened. And on our walk, trees in Bridgeland looked like they had literally been cut in half. So it was definitely strong winds, but no significant damage to houses. At least that was the case in our area. I found out soon that there was a tornado that had hit Bridgeland and really damaged at least 3 to 4 of the homes, but thankfully nobody was hurt in Bridgeland. But there was significant damage throughout the neighborhood, throughout Cypress, and throughout many parts of Houston and to the power grid. We found out pretty quickly that several of the main transmission lines near Cypress for the power grid completely fell over. The power company was saying at the time that there was going to be at least 2 weeks of no power for close to 1 million residents. Now, during this, I posted a few update pictures on my community page on YouTube shortly after it happened, and the main question was, does this happen often? And the answer is no. This is the first time we've had a Derecho storm in this area, and these are basically severe thunderstorms with strong winds, and these types of storms are very common in the Midwest, but not common in the South. I am a big weather nerd, and I follow a lot of Houston weather bloggers, and they all said the weather models were not really presenting an extreme weather event at the time, which is why at large a lot of us were not really prepared for this. Anyway, following the Thursday weather event, we went about 40 hours with no power. We got it back for 12 hours and then lost it again for about another 24 hours. We just got it back. Hopefully it stays on, but we were lucky to have it come back when, even for a short amount of time. There are many people in the Houston area and in Bridgeland who have not had power restored since the storm last Thursday night. The thing this storm did do, though, is once again it highlighted the vulnerability and infrastructure issues of the Texas power grid. Now, this particular storm I did say was rare, but the thing is that in recent years we have had a few extreme rare weather events that were not hurricanes or flooding that the grid could not handle. They have left many without power for days at a time. So for those of you who are unaware, the power grid here in Texas is managed by the Texas Reliability Council and is largely isolated from the national grid. So when natural disasters and emergencies do happen, electricity cannot be imported to the grid from the national grid. Texas also operates on a deregulated electricity market, meaning they rely heavily on market incentives and money and not on strict regulatory requirements to ensure reliability. This has led to an underinvestment in infrastructure improvements and maintenance. For example, during the winter freeze of 2021, when most of Texas lost power for days and it took over 200 lives, it was because the Texas power grid was not adequately winterized, a thing that should have been done and regulated to begin with. in my opinion. And also, of course, the increase in population for Texas, plus these random extreme weather events, has really put a strain on the Texas power grid when it comes to increased usage demands on an already poor grid system. Another more common weather issue you hear about here in Houston is the flooding and hurricanes. Now, of course, this does happen, and there have been some areas that have flooded since I've lived here in the last 5 years or so. Even in early May, Cypress and the north end of the Houston suburbs got slammed pretty hard by a series of storms that were just back to back and caused a minor flooding. So the reality of living in Houston when it comes to weather is that although all these events are rare-ish, we do have tornadoes, we do have hurricanes, we do have severe thunderstorms and flooding, which can lead to severe damage and prolonged power outages. I really went back and forth about making this video because I don't want to scare non-locals about living here and paint this picture that you'll have a thunderstorm or hurricane and your house will flood and you'll go a week without power. But I also wanted to inform you of the reality that these problems do exist, and at some point or another, while you live in Houston, you will be affected to some extent at some point. Not annually, but maybe once every few years. Okay, so more importantly, let's talk about what kind of homes to look for and what you can do to prep your family for these events so that if these natural disasters do happen, you are more safe and prepared. Number one is flood risk. Now, I can give you all the tips on what to look for to minimize flood risk, but remember, natural disasters do happen, and no matter what you do, there's always going to be a chance. No one in Houston is totally exempt, as we cannot predict Mother Nature. The first suggestion is to check the FEMA maps to see what the flood risk is. This is the same map that the homeowner's insurance will use to evaluate your home. Number two is to check the elevation of the home you're considering and make sure it is not in a low-lying area. Luckily, in many of our suburbs for the last 15 years, many of the developers and builders have raised the ground before they lay the foundation, so it's not something you necessarily have to worry about. Number three is to check if the home had previous flooding or insurance claims, because that will be a pretty good indicator if there might be one in the future. And number four is to check the property's drainage systems, or at the very minimum, plan to install a solid drain system for when we do have heavy rains here in the Houston suburbs. Number five is to understand the developer or community drainage system. Usually the streets intentionally flood here in Houston, and that flow of water goes to retention ponds, which go out to our natural creeks and bayous. The second thing to prepare for is power outages. So number one, obviously make sure you have a battery operated flashlight and emergency radio handy, because like I said, more than likely your cell phone will temporarily stop working after the storm and until power is restored. Number two is, after a storm here in Houston, there is a good chance roads and stores will not be accessible for a few days, so you have to have some non-perishable food and water handy. Do not hoard and take more than you need for your family for a few days, but make sure that you do have water and non-perishable food in your home. Number three is to have extra of anything solar or battery operated. I have seen people buy the small motion detector outdoor solar lights. You can set them outside and bring them in at night to have some light in your home without having to use your flashlights. Fans operated by batteries, camping, cooking stoves, just anything that doesn't use power is really nice to have. And number four is a portable generator. Now, I know that this is a luxury and it is not attainable for everyone, but if you have the means, especially if you have small children or medicine that needs to stay cool, they have come a long way in recent years, and the price ranges from anywhere from $300 to all the way up to $8,000 or more. But you can get a pretty solid whole house portable generator for under $2,000. So I definitely look into that if you can. The last thing I want to mention on preparing for these natural disasters is community. The thing I love most about Houston when these events happen is the community. I am blown away by just how gracious and kind people are, even within neighborhoods, in helping their fellow neighbors out. People with generators offering charging stations, storing non-perishables, offering extension cords to neighboring houses without generators, and sharing updates and information with one another. So I suggest when you do move here, make sure you join neighborhood Facebook groups, the neighborhood app, or Reddit forums, because it's truly a way to stay connected with the updates and be able to help one another out in a time of need. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.